Read certain excerpts from the poems that they can understand the videos better, because now that you know the stories behind the poems, or at least some, you can understand the feeling behind each video and why the color palette was chosen, as well as the feeling that it emulates. So I think it's important. Like, without reading some of the poems, you may not know exactly what Isaiah is trying to voice, but you may have a certain intuition about it. So that is also part of our presentation, is that there's no correct answer to interpret our piece. It's just completely open-minded, and so there's no limitations.
Which is something sort of you have to recognize when you work with another person. Because I've written other projects, and I have, some little chapbooks and things I've put together myself. And it's much easier to work by yourself because I don't feel bound to someone else's desires as well. And so something that we had to learn to do was sort of to recognize the importance of our own identity in the project, but also recognize the importance of the other person's identity, and that, the point of a collaborative project isn't to produce the same thing you would produce on your own, but to see how your two voices can create something unique. And so, this project is sort of typical of my work in some degree. It's very based on place. It's very sort of sensuous and about the body and earth. But in general, I tend to be a much more earth-based poet on my own. And so I had to think a little more conceptually than I would otherwise, and a little more abstractly than I would otherwise, because Steve's work tends to be more avant-garde, I would say, than mine in general, and I tend to be more reserved and more sort of classical in my work to some degree. I write, very sort of fundamental narrative poems. I don't write anything that's super fantastic or avant-garde to any degree. It's not to say that they don't have their own voice, and there's not a place for both, but I had to stretch myself and think in a more slightly avant-garde way than I would be typically accustomed to, and I think I forced Steve to be a little more confined than he would have preferred to be. So, but it was the fact that he forced me to stretch in a new way, and I think I hopefully helped him stretch in a new way too. And then we got this new project that had our personal identities in it, but it was at the same time completely unique because we had thought in a slightly different way than we would have otherwise. So.